until.
10 seconds.
Yeah. What? I'm just.
No, Steve's like, alright, you're up.
Okay, we're live. Okay, welcome back to our work meeting. We need to jump back to 2.3, discussion of proposed amendments to Title 10. Clint, good luck.
2 minutes.
10 minutes.
That's the second time anybody said that to me in the last.
So I think, can we start with just what we hope to accomplish with the ordinance, maybe to set the ground, the framework.
Set the
for council for
expectations.
what it is that we are trying to fix, and then we can.
And I'm not gonna get into too much of the background, I feel like we've kind of
Yes.
run this horse into the ground a few
Yes.
times.
Thank you.
So, I'm gonna be super short in my presentation, and then I'll let you guys have a discussion.
You're saying all the right things so far.
I kinda feel like Todd should be he should be presenting this, who would have thought that the attorney would be the funny guy?
How many slides do you have?
Nobody's saying he
I
is the
have
funny
4,
guy.
maybe 5.
That's 500% more than Todd had.
See? Okay. So this is our recommendation. So does the proposed ordinance address these following issues? Does it clarify standards? Does it improve enforcement? Does it improve safety? Mitigate impacts on aesthetics? Comply with the general plan and protect property values? If it does, let's move it on to a public meeting for final consideration. So I'm just gonna go over from the last meeting, we talked about this was in February. There's probably good reason for that. Based on how popular this topic is. But some of the things that we changed, we took out ATVs from what is counted as an accessory vehicle. We increased the amount of the accessory vehicles on residential properties. We removed the section regarding the number of same types. Remember we said you can only have so many of a certain type, took that out. Just require that storage areas are to be weed-free. We added language to restrict construction but allow remodeling of RVs. Required tracking pads onto public streets. Excluded ag vehicles from the count total. And then the major probably change we made was including an exception. So if somebody wants to go over what's permitted, they can do that. From up to a quarter acre, they can go 1 additional, quarter acre to 1 acre is 2 additional, 1 acre to 5 is 3, and then 5 plus is 4. So it gives you the total breakdown there. And then when they want to exceed, there are certain requirements that they have to follow. A lot of those fall in line with a conditional use requiring a home occupation license that will be considered by the planning commission. They'd have to do some additional paving, some fencing. You can't live in an RV, you have to retain them in good repair, and then no parking closer than 3 feet.
Looks good
To
to
the
me.
property line. So if there's this is your opportunity now, if there's any final adjustments you want us to make, or if you're okay with this, or you just wanted to move forward so you can vote on it. That's what we need to know.
I'd rather talk about flag lots.
Chickens?
Stop.
Maybe this is a matter
Black
of,
parking or something.
so we did get an email from a resident a couple of weeks ago asking about where the process was. They expressed their concern that they do hope that the city implements some kind of restriction on RV storage. But that's all the correspondence we've got from the public.
Go ahead.
I do like how you segregated out ag, but they have to be on an ag lot for it to qualify, okay? Cause I'm like, any trailer can be ag related, but
Has to be on an ag lot that is actively being used that way.
Yeah, it was interesting that you added horse trailers on, used for hauling wise. Anyway, as recreational vehicle, because if they're used for hauling livestock, they wouldn't be a recreational vehicle.
but they can be dual use though, right? You can put your 4-wheelers in there, right?
Our own trailer.
I know, but
Well,
yeah.
you could transport cattle in a horse trailer,
True, yeah, that's true, yeah.
I suppose.
Well, you could be traveling
Sheep,
livestock
goats,
for the rodeo, or
and
you
throw
could
hay in
be
there,
taking
throw
your
sawdust in
horses
there,
up to
throw
the trails,
sheep
you
in
know.
there,
Yeah,
anything like that.
and we moved in a horse trailer a couple times, so it was like, it's not always ag, but
It's
yeah.
not very recreational.
No.
Yeah.
And this is to cover, so we're looking at, in the beginning, it was recreational vehicles, and then as we kind of looked in more into it, there was a lot of people that have utility trailers and all other kinds of stuff, so that was kind of all included, that's why it's not the recreational vehicle ordinance, it's accessory vehicle ordinance.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think.
all those utility trailers, all those kinds of things would fall into it.
Yeah, I think you, thank you for coming back with some changes and stuff. I guess my biggest issue is just the premise of the ordinance in itself, because this ordinance in my mind is about aesthetics. It's about the look, it's nothing about, because I can have a shop and I can put 18 trailers in there and it's not a problem. So you can't tell me it's a safety issue if you can have that many trailers on your property.
There are safety issues when people put them in their front yards and they're blocking the sidewalks or they're
Blocking
blocking
the
views.
sidewalk is already against the ordinance.
Right, but they're.
But blocking views or like the RVs coming out, like even though it's 15 feet behind the sight lines, but then yeah, it is, some of it's aesthetics from your neighbors looking, like you taking my view away, right?
I think a huge chunk of it is
Yeah.
that. And that's my issue. If it's a safety thing, then let's address the safety concerns. If it's an aesthetic thing, where do we cross the line between personal property rights and I don't like the look of your thing? I said this earlier, well, I don't like greenhouses, so I think we should make an ordinance that says there could be no greenhouses. I don't really have a problem with greenhouses, but just as an example, that says there can't be any greenhouses. And then at the end of this ordinance, the part that really I do not like is when it says you got a year to comply. So you gotta paint your house or change it within a year, no matter how much it costs you. The other part is the screening. Do you know how many thousands of dollars it would cost people to screen all their properties if they don't currently have that? And you're saying within a year you have to screen all this? You have lived here and parked that trailer in your backyard for 40 years, but now I'm gonna say, and you don't live on the 1 acre lot that gives you an exception to that. Now I'm gonna say you have to put up a $15,000 privacy fence, and it's a 6-foot privacy fence, cause you can't see through it. So, and the only thing we allow basically is vinyl fence.
Sounds like an HOA.
Exactly what it sounds like, and that's my problem with it, is that there's so many HOAs in our city. And if you wanna live in that kind of environment, that kind of structured environment, absolutely support that, go live in an HOA. But if you don't, then why are we restricting that freedom to utilize your property? Unless you can show me it's a safety issue. Parking on the sidewalk is a safety issue. If I come home and I got my little utility trailer and I back it up to the front of my garage and I'm 15 feet off the sidewalk, who cares if you park your utility trailer there, because you're gonna hook onto it in the morning and go to work. I just have a hard time restricting people's use of their private property. And there was somewhere in here it says only cosmetic, has been good repair and cosmetically appealing or something. My horse trailer's got rust on it, but it's very functional there, very useful. So whose idea of cosmetic? That kind of language in ordinance, I just think can't exist. Because your idea of something that looks cosmetically appealing and my idea might be completely different. And who gets to determine that? So some of those kinds of things are really problematic to me. I just really have a hard time with the screening. I know I talked to Nathan about this shortly after February, we talked it before, was the cost that we can be mandating on people who have lived here for a long time by making them screen everything can be extraordinary expensive. And I'm pretty sure, I know it's hard enough to buy groceries, let alone put up your whole lot in vinyl fencing. And those are probably my biggest concerns with that. I understand completely. I'm just trying to figure out what we're trying to solve. Is it just because that person called in and they don't like the idea that they can park their trailers there anymore? Or if we're truly having issues with, people are pulling out and running over kids, or, that's a different issue.
So I think a lot of the complaints that we get from planning perspective is that people, they don't like the look of them in their neighborhoods, and sometimes it overtakes their neighborhood, right? You walk out your front door and instead of, being able to see down the street, you've got an RV on this side, potentially maybe you have an RV on this side. It doesn't feel like a residential neighborhood to them, it feels more like and this is the complaints that we're hearing, is that it feels more like a commercial or industrial type of area. They've invested all this money, this is the most money they're gonna spend on anything, and now they can't enjoy it the way that they assume that they would.
Are these single RVs on single lots, or are they multiple RVs?
Well, we've had issues with several lots in the city where they've had multiple
I think it's I'm not opposed to, if I own an RV, it's parked down the side of my house or parked in my backyard or whatever. 2, 3, 4, 5 RVs, that's a different story. Yeah, and well, it may or may not be right, maybe my uncle's, maybe my cousin, maybe my, but there's,
There are exceptions for screening as well. If there, if the
On
applicant.
an acre lot.
Huh?
The only one I saw was on an acre lot.
Right, on an acre lot.
So anybody with,
Or an acre plus, right, greater than an
yeah,
acre.
3/4 of an acre, and you,
we have those in the city.
several hundred, and you park your trailer. I mean, I just can tell you that just driving in here today, I can count dozens and dozens of people who would be in violation of this, and there's no way I will ever feel comfortable. It's different if you pass a rule now and say moving forward, you have to comply with this. But if you go back and say you've lived here for decades, and now we're gonna take away that right that you've enjoyed for literally decades, and say you have to screen it all and you have to do all this, I will never feel comfortable with that.
So the difficulty that we have from an enforcement standpoint is that there's no line right now. So the ones that we know are a problem, there's nothing in the code that allows us to take any action. So we're trying to figure out where
Perfect.
do we draw that line to address the ones that are causing a safety hazard or those types of things, while also trying to balance the private property interest rights? That if we're gonna draw a line, where do we draw it? That's the question that we're trying to answer, but right
What
now
are
there
the
isn't,
issues?
there's no enforcement mechanism right now.
What are the issues? If there's an issue, tell me what it is.
People turning empty lots into RV rentals. That's a problem.
But
So
you can't-
it's, there's,
Okay, so then we could address
Right,
that
but that-
easily.
but there's
I'm not
nothing
saying
in the
this is the
code,
right solution,
the
I'm
only
just
thing
saying
that
that's what-
is an enforcement mechanism for that in the code is business licensing. And then how do you articulate that it's a business versus I'm just storing my uncle's and my cousin's and my grandpa's trailer on the lot, right? Like that, those are really, really difficult things to enforce absent something in the code that gives us at least something to start a conversation with somebody.
Right, and so that's where you come up with the
That'd be
numbers,
fine.
right?
That's a
At
great
your
choice.
lot, this many number. I guess that's the thing I'm trying to understand. What are we trying to solve? What issues are you talking about that they're trying to go out and there's no way to enforce it? Now, if you're talking about the neighbors don't like the look of it, I'm just telling you, it's like, okay, I don't like your purple flowers,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean?
That's why it's a legislative item, right? And that's why this discussion is important, but we had the same conversation when we talked about adopting the ordinance to enforce weeds, right? Technically, that's an aesthetic thing too.
Right,
There are some other safety concerns that we're trying to mitigate, but there's nothing in the code right now that lets us take any action, so we're just
well, there's
trying to
something,
figure out where
like
that
if you're
balance
parking on a
is.
sidewalk, right? If you're covering a sidewalk,
Impeding
there's
traffic.
there's definitely something in the code that says you can't do that.
Sure.
How do you say, if this code if we pass this as is, how do you enforce, and what level do you enforce to
So much money.
say it is 1 or 2 RVs on a property that doesn't meet this or it's not screened? What's that look like? Is that the community service people going out?
It's 5 acres.
So through our community services officers, it's just the same as we manage other aspects of code
Encroachments or-
enforcement and it's not, we're not walking up to fences and peeking over to count how many trailers are in the backyard, right? It's something that's an obvious glaring issue that's
Or
affecting or
complaint
impacting the surrounding community. It allows us to have some sort of a metric to gauge that against and take action on if necessary. Still provides for the officer's discretion in any enforcement action, and then still provides for what our primary philosophy is, which is voluntary compliance, right? We're not just hammering people with citations. The goal is voluntary compliance.
Right, and I guess I appreciate that and understand all that. My issue always with passing a law is that it is a law. And so if the council changes and decides, hey, we wanna enforce everything, it's the law. Or if code enforcement goes out there and the neighbor's mad about something, it has nothing to do with that, well, just another bite that they can just take away. Right, it's a law, and if we pass something, I feel like we should pass it because we expect or assume it's going to be enforced the way we
To the
wrote it.
fullest, yep.
So let me try it, I'm trying to guide this, right, cause I think there's a lot, so of this, Sherry, tell me what your concerns are, the screening?
Oh, yeah, I just think that if you,
We can remove the cosmetic language, that's fine.
Cause I do think, I'll give my 2 cents, I mean, this is where, kind of I think we're coding here, Steve was saying it too. Code enforcement exists because we are trying to protect, there's certain,
aesthetics.
yeah, there is a certain aesthetic we want in the community. I think that's what we're trying to find a way to balance that versus, cause we have code enforcement on several things that are cosmetic and, but how do we balance that? Cause this is, I get a lot of complaints about these RV storage. I think that's, so you're right, but so that's what I'm saying, help us understand. Cause I agree, we don't wanna, if there's thousands, that's not, if there's hundreds of people already in violation, we don't wanna. So what is it screening, is it, what are your specific, are you okay with some of this?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, and I was okay with some of the, I think you did a good job with adding, I think you probably did a good job with the whole thing based on what your perception of it should be, for sure.
Well, this is just feedback from the council that I'm trying to
Right.
mirror.
Right.
If there's more information that we need to change and adjust.
Sure, so here's one, I think it's in section B versus number C and D, this is just hammering down through it. You can park a trailer on your lot if you wanna build for a year, right? But you can't hook it up to anything, no water, no sewer, no power, no anything. Well, how would you heat that, how would you flush the toilet, I think that we're just dig a hole. I just think that we would be better off to say you're allowed to hook up to those things. You have to go through a permit process and hook up to temporary power or sewer, those types of things. And rather assume somebody's gonna live in a fifth wheel trailer on a lot for up to a year. If it was like 2 months, it'd be different, but up to a year is not realistic to me to expect that that's gonna remain in good condition for them to live like that. So I think that that's probably something we should think about. I think, D there, that was the same thing. Recreational vehicles must be maintained in a clean manner as to not create excessive amounts of trash, noise, smells, and unnecessary debris. Okay, well, if you're gonna require them to go without power, then they're probably gonna run a generator, which is gonna generate noise, or else how are they gonna have any heat? Those types of things are really, I think that we probably should look at stuff like that. If I told you about the one that says cosmetic, I gotta find that, sir. Oh yeah, so then it's in section D, it says, all AVs stored on any property described above shall be maintained in good working and cosmetic condition. I believe it should say in good working condition, because cosmetic is very subjective.
Agreed.
What about registered?
Registered is hard to regulate.
Because
I
you
think.
can't see,
If
you
they're
have
behind
to,
a fence or something like that, you're not gonna be able to see it, and I don't think they wanna go onto somebody's property to.
So let's make it.
There's nothing that says you can't store an unregistered trailer on your property.
or
I
a
mean,
car even, you can, yeah.
That doesn't,
So let's just remove cosmetic there, Dan. Let's go through
Often
that.
you're talking about the storage in the front yard or on the driveway or in a parking, which enforces other things, that's often, right? That is another public policy, right? We talk about parking issues. If people put trailers in all throughout their parking, then they're parking on the street because their garage is also full of stuff. Those are true code enforcement issues that you end up having to deal with over time.
Sure.
If one neighbor does it, it's fine, but if 5 or 6 neighbors do it, now you have serious issues.
So that's what I'm saying, can we go through this kind of line by line and let's deal with this?
I would suggest you went 4, 6, and then 7, I would suggest you go 4, 6, and 8 on the number of trailers, just make it even. If you went 4, 6, 7, and 10, I go 4, 6, 8, and 10, be consistent. It's not.
You just want one more trailer.
Oh, probably.
You following us, Clint?
Yep.
Okay.
I can promise you that I've discussed this with lots of people around, especially my area, I see this everywhere, right? And I just have a hard time when you've lived there forever and you've parked your trailer right there forever, and now we're gonna come in and say, you got a year to get that behind a white vinyl fence. Cause I promise you, I could care less on my street if they have a trailer parked there or not.
Back up, Sarah.
Yeah,
Just in time for closed meeting.
yeah, screening, that's the biggest thing.
home occupation.
Shall be screened from view of the public street, public trails and open space, and adjacent property owners within a 6-foot solid fence or within a legal accessory structure except.
F7.
And then, if it's naturally screened from view by the topography of the lot,
F7.
and then you gotta prove the views, the main parking area of the home and is located behind the front of the home is required. So if I'm parked on the side of my house, but you can still see everything, does there have to be any screening?
No, as long as it's behind, either even or behind the front of the home, you don't have to screen the front of that,
But you'd have to screen the
the
side.
sides and the rear.
I guess again, that's a lot of money if you think about putting up that kind of privacy.
Sure.
I don't think the state should have to do any screening unless it's.
Those numbers.
Agreed. I think if they're coming in for a home occupation license, then it's a different story. We put a conditional use, we say, here's the stuff that you have to do because you're running a business out of here, not just a residence.
To me, that makes sense, but to just tell your neighbor they've gotta do some screening, cause I don't like you have a trailer back there.
That's my issue with the screening. I think
Well, the
that.
tough thing, most trailers are taller than the screening, regardless.
Yeah,
And-
that's why I'm like, this is silly. I can see all their trailers and all their boats back
I mean,
there
unless it's a
anyway.
flatbed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Boat, RV, camper, horse trailer, utility trailer, they're all taller.
So are you recommending removing all of that screening? I'm trying to figure out how to figure it.
Or
Unless
did
it
you-
falls into
Or did
the
you say if
business.
it's a home occupation, if they're doing.
I think it should only apply for home
So
occupation.
only if they want to exceed, they have to put up fencing, otherwise, no fencing.
Okay, it can't exceed. Would they be in violation?
They can exceed
They can
if
exceed
come
under a
in.
special exception, so the special exception requires them to have a home occupation, go through a conditional use permit application process. They have to store them on an approved, like concrete or
Surface.
asphalt,
Yeah.
surface things,
And then we make it all behind a screen.
and then it all be behind the
There
fence.
could be
Yeah, it's actually
conditional,
required them to fence the whole lot if they have that.
If you want to, it was designed so a home occupation, I mean, I think that we're pretty generous in the amount of RVs that we're allowing on all of our properties. I think if you wanted to exceed that, I think we're just trying to make that less of a
Pretty-
detriment.
That's
to
where
those-
the-
Yeah,
that's
that's
where
a
the
substantial administrative process.
That's where
Yeah,
the stick
I
comes
agree,
in.
I agree with that completely.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I guess that will kind of go in line with the grandfathering. In order to provide Harriman residents time to comply with city ordinance and who do not currently comply with city ordinance, they have a year to comply. And again, it goes back to, I don't know any ordinance I've ever passed in the city that you weren't grandfathered in. And it's from here on out, you have to comply, but if you were, it's like, maybe, okay, then maybe tomorrow you guys decide I can't have cows, and then you can just say, I got a year to get rid of all, you know what I mean?
Well,
It's like,
and if those things only apply if you're exceeding, right? I think that clears it up.
'Cause-
right
yeah,
there,
'cause
that
we take
you don't-
away-
You don't need a grandfathering period at all, it's just if there's an issue, you're exceeding the number, we need you to go through this
Exactly.
process to keep.
cause
Or
the
they
thing that
comply,
you would have had to comply with really is the screening and that kind of stuff, and if we remove that, then it
Yeah,
wouldn't be an
because
issue.
honestly, the ones who are probably exceeding that number
Are running a home business.
are doing some kind of a storage business, more than like, or it's an ag use and they've got the ag exception, right?
Yeah.
So,
Overwhelmingly, our complaints are not the 2 and 3 and 4 vehicles, it's the 15 and
Yeah.
20.
Would you say 45?
45, yeah.
45 on
And there's
the
no home on these lots a lot of times, right?
no, there are occasionally.
Just the
Yeah,
other
cause
case
that,
is
Bar
Pearl's
lot
old
saying,
house, I mean, Pearl's old house.
all my
has
neighbors
a-
can pay me
has a
$100 a
storage
month
unit
and
for
store their
sure,
RV
and
here.
there's
Just
home and
drive
stuff like
through
that.
Old Town, and I mean,
Stay out of
you
my
know
area.
one thing about property taxes, and the reason you have property taxes is that's the way everybody used to make their living, was what was on your property, right? It's an old antiquated system. But Old Town falls into that, and there's a lot of larger lots that used to be used, and now they're not, and
Yeah.
there's
There's a ton of that over by Butterfield Park too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places like that where, quite frankly, to Sherry's point that she made before, it's something the city needs, that's why you're seeing it, so where's the line to draw and how do we do it?
Yeah, and you're
I
not seeing
think
a
it's
whole
just
field
common-
full of weeds.
Yeah, I think it's just common sense that what's the number was what I got stuck on before, right? So if we pick a reasonable number and we can always come back and change that, right? If it's a reasonable number and they exceed it, and then we require those things, then that gives us the tool to go out and help those folks, right? I'm not opposed to them doing it. On my drive here every single week, I drive through Old Town, and I can tell you there's 3 or 4 right on the way that are doing it.
Yeah.
I have no problem with them doing it. Their lots allow it. They're a great location for it. Is it a nuisance to their neighbor? Maybe. This would give us a way to help them both.
She's saying three, so.
Yeah, that,
I don't think we need to, I think this point you're trying to make sure, we don't need to get nitpicky with people that have four
Screen it all
utility
day.
trailers.
You have to get a conditional use.
And that's what I'm saying, that's why I was just trying to
And
understand
there would
where,
be a
I think we've
public
kinda,
And they have to spend all the money.
so that's, I just wanna make sure let's remove what we,
Yeah,
the screening, other than what we talked about. The number, you're okay with those numbers where they are, move that 1 to 8?
Yeah, just go 4, 6, 8, 10,
Okay.
I think is how it
There would be
goes,
no
and
enforcement
then
for having
we'll see
problem.
absolutely how it goes, but I just, those are my issues, I was just like, I just can't go
Other
with the
than
screening,
business.
it's just, it's
Yeah,
too
one
impactful
condition
to
And I'm
me.
relying on you, cause I don't see that as much in my,
Yeah, I see it every
neighborhood, so
day,
I-
for sure.
so that's why I'm relying on you, so I'm just saying, I'm just trying to guide this is all I'm doing, I'm not trying to argue
Now,
with you, I'm
okay,
just trying
so
to
if they
understand and guide
park
this.
their trailer in their driveway in front of their garage, is that allowed in this ordinance then?
Hasn't been before.
No.
You say those things were covered before.
Well, I
weren't
think
they?
Yeah.
those are already,
It's
But
already.
we don't enforce that.
we, I believe
We do, if
we
we,
have, if it
We-
comes
we
down,
usually-
we're always,
We're on report right now, we're still on, like, our code
we're
enforcement.
not
strictly
actively
is-
controlling it.
No.
Yeah, those are the ones
that's
that we,
nice,
if there's,
it's
if it creates.
But it's
Typically, it's like a day or two,
already,
it's not.
this isn't changing that.
Not
right?
Hold on,
No.
hold on,
Th-
lot of
this
side,
al-
hold on,
This
lot of
already,
side conversation.
this doesn't change any of that. Our code already says you can't park a trailer in your driveway and it can't hang out into the sidewalk and it can't be visually impairing the corner where people are trying to turn. Like, I think maybe we're confusing some of the issues here. Those are already addressed.
Already there,
As I drove over, I heard the comment that, well, people don't like it when they look down the street and see trailers everywhere. Well, that's already addressed by our current code.
Yeah.
You can't do that in the street and in the front, right? We're talking about people's backyards, and that's where I agree with Sherry. I have a hard time telling people what they can and can't do with their property within reason. So I think all we need to do is strike that reasonable line of how many is reasonable for somebody to have on their property. And if it's over that, we have a process to exceed it and what needs to be done. I think that's reasonable.
Okay,
So
so,
leave the rest alone.
okay, so screening, any other recommended changes for plan then?
Those ones I
Specific, not
said,
just, I'm trying to get
cosmetic
past just
and-
the general, we keep talking in circles, generals, what's the specifics?
This is
Let's
what I
not-
have so far, so cosmetic language removed, the screening element revised, allowing people that are building a house and living in an RV to hook up to
Utilities.
And it has, but it has to come through
Temporary
the process,
utilities.
and they have, to obviously you guys
I
have to,
don't know what kind of process that would.
yeah,
those numbers you got through, I mean, that's, or a lot more maybe.
Didn't know we
It's
allowed
just in-
people to live on.
yeah, for
property in
up to a
trailer.
year. You can live
I
up to
just-
a year, and it's like it's too long to
Not
go without
aesthetically
being hooked up to
pleasing to see
anything.
that.
If you're living there, is it reasonable to expect that somebody would, I mean, they could use their RV, you know, for bathroom facilities, could they not move it off and go empty it once a week, fill it up with propane, move it back on the lot?
You could, but it might be unreasonable. I mean, when you set up an RV, you set up an RV.
And plus
Especially
you're
if it's for
asking them to
conditions building,
drive
yeah.
through a construction lot in the winter and the mud and everything, you're asking them to pull in and out of the street at once a week to deal with all that also.
They're gonna have, you know,
If it's under, if it's temporary residence while it's under construction, I would agree that hooking up to utilities seems appropriate.
Reasonable.
It's just like putting a
Would it be a
mobile home
permitted
on
use?
it,
So
you know?
we're requiring
Or
that
through-
there's a,
permit,
that there's a permit, that there's a permit
Yeah, there's a
under,
process
right?
where, cause then that way,
We don't have one yet.
We don't have it yet.
but my guess is they're probably doing it anyway. And so let's just allow it, do a
How
permit,
many
so
are
they do
doing
it
it
right.
Illegally,
Exactly.
currently now,
I know some
on
that have, so
a
it's
permanent
like-
resident too.
Yeah, so let's
Yeah,
just
so-
have a
Do you wanna
permit process.
think on
I don't
that,
know.
like?
Yeah, I gotta look into it, cause I don't know if the sewer district
I don't
will
know.
allow.
The sewer district doesn't allow RVs to
Dump
dump
into the-
outside of a regulated RV dump.
So
you could just say electrical.
What if it-
But I wonder,
I don't know.
Well, that's a huge process.
In water, I don't know if you have concerns with cross connection or anything,
Well, we'd have to make sure that they have protection.
with a meter.
Why don't you guys talk about that?
Just
Yeah,
the
just
details
see
of
if there's
it.
something that, because that was
would
my
it be more of
concern.
a headache for them to hook up than not,
Maybe.
almost?
sometimes maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe, other than power.
I just don't know how mom's gonna be
Especially out
happy
there.
sleeping in a camper for a year.
Yeah.
while
I
our
don't
house
think
is
it'll be
being built.
mom, I think
Because
it'll
you don't want
be,
generators running all.
I know, yeah.
it'll be dad living in the trailer.
But we've done that for like
Deal
remote
with it.
cabins and stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's not.
I know specifically of a person who just.
Sherry knows all the people.
Exactly this, but it's like, so why don't we just let you go up to it then, other than doing
I
everything?
would say though, thinking about it, listening to the issues about the dumping, right, you can't hook up a RV into the sewer and, you know, all the water issues and stuff like that. I think maybe it would just be something where you just allow them to hook up to power, so they don't have to run a generator.
Yeah, cause then you're in.
Well, you have temp power from Rocky Mountain Power. You don't
That's
have a
what I'm
temp sewer until your laterals and everything are put in.
Yeah,
so
but you
it's
can't,
tough,
you
yeah.
can't dump from an RV just into the sewer because of all the chemicals in the RV.
Yeah, you have to go to the RV dump, yeah.
Yeah, so they're gonna have to move it to do that
Yeah.
anyway.
We can, we just can't do it legally.
Oh, man. I did not just
Isn't
hear
there a movie
that.
about
Did
that?
somebody just say
Wow.
something about
She's on a
obeying the law?
septic, she's on a septic or something.
You see Sherry out there in her bathrobe.
What's this? What's Cousin Eddie getting? Cousin Eddie's coming over.
Next slide presentation.
Okay, let's go, yes.
Yeah, cousin Sherry.
Okay, let's go, I'm trying to move
What's your
this,
next video?
I wanna go home. Okay, what else, anything specific?
Those are the biggest.
We good?
So excessive noise,
That's a good
do we wanna
idea.
remove that?
Oh,
Is that-
that one, that's D.
So if they're running their generators, I'm.
Oh, and they're temporary.
In your backyard and
But
the-
they're next door to people, it's the same thing we get with construction noise.
Yeah, is it-
Oh,
there's
the
a
noise
noise
ordinance, they just follow the noise ordinance, I guess.
Yeah,
So remove that and let it fall under noise?
Or just reference the noise.
Or
I
just
just
reference
like to
that?
simplify
Is this
something
Title
or
10?
something
Yeah.
already.
I would take that out and let it be in an enforcement title and not have it in it, so. Just, I think if you were gonna do,
I'll refer to the excessive noise.
refer to the
ordinance.
noise ordinance, let the noise ordinance come with that.
Okay.
Noise.
Okay, what else, anything else?
Those are the biggest things.
Okay, so do you wanna modify and come back?
No, I mean, yes.
I love how you just.
Like, how many times do I have
The
to
next one
modify
is
and
general
come back?
meeting for,
And bring it to the general meeting, no more work meeting, bring it right to general.
Yeah, that's good, cause I have definitely heard of people that would have been here at the next meeting, cause they're not happy about this ordinance. So hopefully we won't have a herd, we'll just have a few.
thank
There
you
might
for
be.
all the work done on this,
Yes.
though.
Yeah.
This is hard work, this is a big lift. We're almost there,
This is really fun.
we're almost there.
And you got to stay extra late to do it.
I thought it was even Best Buy. I bet you guys got to stay with me, so.
Just so you know, I did tell my kids
You
on
have
my
clothes.
hair,
It
I'm
was
like,
good
I feel
having
really bad, I don't wanna go see Clint, I feel bad.
Hey,
It's always making me
This
feel
isn't like
bad.
a personal attack on me.
Oh, good.
I don't
You
care.
should have heard
This
what,
is, you're making the ordinance, I'm just writing it.
And Clint, truly hats off, I mean, the compliments in there were, it was.
Aaron is a fantastic developer to work with, so.
That's good.
he's a good guy.
Okay, appreciate everybody's work, okay? So we'll look for a motion to go to closed. Sorry, he's got another game tonight at 10.
I make a motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to go into closed meeting for the following purposes as provided in Utah State Code annotated section 52-4-205. Strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation. Strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, or to discuss a proposed development agreement, project proposal, or financing proposal related to the development of land owned by the city.
Motion by Steve, second by Sherry. Teddy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jared?
Yeah.
Sherry, did I ask you? No, well, yeah. Okay, we're going to close, we'll do it here, council, Nathan, Wendy,
Like, that's the.
I didn't hear my name.
Todd.
He just called you council.
You guys are asked, see you tomorrow.
Thank
And
you,
then
Wendy.
she came here to counsel me not to say, yes, you can, it's just not like.
Thank you, Cody.